Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Martin Meisenheimer with Andre Haykal. Really happy to have him with us today. He is a top 100 podcaster, a best-selling author, an entrepreneur, and believe it or not, a college student. So he manages to obviously to fit a lot into his days, and really wanted to chat with Andre to have him share with us a little bit more about his background, what drives him, and what we can learn from his approach to life. So welcome to the program, Andre. Really pleased to have you with us.
Yeah, appreciate it, Martin. Happy to be here.
All right. So I thought, first off, let me just ask you a quick question, and then we'll go a little bit deeper. But what is it that drives you to do all of these things at a very young age while you're still in college?
I think it's just being brought up around a family that has done it their entire lives. So I think family is the number one aspect to all that. Like my dad is an immigrant entrepreneur. My mom's side of the family is built around entrepreneurs. So I just watched it growing up, and it kind of just inspired me to want to do it myself as well. And as soon as I saw the first opportunity to do that and kind of get involved, I did. And from there, it got addicting, and it's truly my passion. So it's kind of just my oxygen now. If I don't do it, then I kind of feel lost.
That's a great way to put it. It's your oxygen. So it's really what you live for, huh?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
so right now you're at Binghamton University, and are you from that part of the country? Where'd you grow up and go to high school and all?
Yeah, so I'm originally born and raised in Binghamton, New York. So I've lived here my entire life. It's small state or small city in upstate New York. So I went to a Catholic high school, had a small friend group, small classes, really, I guess, religious family and upbringing, and then stay local for college. My biggest thing with college is I saw all my friends go off and pay, $60,000 to $70,000 a year for these prestigious universities. But at the same time, right in our backyard was one of the top public schools, but it was a state school. So there's a situation where my doorstep's less than a mile away from the classes, which gives me the opportunity to live at home, not have to pay thousands of dollars in, living costs and expenses at school and pay a state tuition. So I thought, especially for what I want to do with entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff, it was the ideal situation to go in, get a degree, and not really have the burden of debt and loans and all the other kinds of things that college has.
Yeah, that sounds very wise. Seems like a good move. So I want to talk more about your feelings overall, just about higher education and the value. I know in your book you talk quite a bit about that. But before we go there, tell me a little bit more. How you got started. You mentioned family was a big factor in the sort of initial inklings of becoming an entrepreneur. So when did you kind of start getting those feelings, I want to start something on my own? And what was your first venture?
Yeah, and it was always stemmed from my grandpa. So my grandpa's like the most true-bred entrepreneur that I've ever met. For 40 years, he was actually, just a 9-to-5 worker. He was in the school system. He was a principal, teacher, did all those kinds of things. But he was an idea man. But given his situation, especially 30, 40 years ago, or however long ago it was, entrepreneurship just wasn't like an option.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you had a family of 8 like he did and whatever else. So it was really hard for him to act on an idea because of the family and the situation he had. Always had to bring home some money to put food on the table and whatnot. But he always had these ideas. And the first time he finally took a leap on an idea, that was the family company that still supports us to this day, 50 years later. So what would happen is I come from a really large family. So I have 7 siblings myself. I'm the second oldest. And my mom's side, on my grandpa's side, the entrepreneur family, we have 40 first grandkids.
Wow.
And almost every Sunday since I could remember, we get together at my grandparents' house. Just,
Wow.
And whether it be 20 of them there at the time or 40 or however many of them are there, there's always a packed house.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone knows the company. It's like what keeps us going. It's kind of what has given us the opportunity to live this kind of life. And my grandpa's always been that guy of just, he's got these 40 grandkids. How can I tap into these young minds to kind of bring the next big idea. So he's always inspired us, to like make it fun for kids as to, how can we sell more books? So their business is selling coupon books. So he'd always come up with competitions for the grandkids. What grandkid could sell more book, or what grandkid has the next big idea? And I just, like I said, it just kind of became a part of me. It's like I'd be in high school and middle school or whatever else, and I'd go home on a Sunday night after sitting at my grandma's all day, thinking about the next big idea for the company rather than my homework assignment that was due the next day. And
nice.
From that age, that's kind of where I got my start in high school. I did work for the company for a little bit, and that was another big thing. It's like, it's great what the company does, but I don't want to be a cog in the machine. And I'm grateful for all the opportunities that they've given me, but I knew that they would have made the same choice as to leave after so many months of, just getting a feel for how it works. And I started my own thing. So in high school, I was passionate about like shoes and like limited edition sneakers and clothing, but I was, a kid. So I had the same problem as everyone else. I couldn't afford as much as I wanted to buy. And so I had to work for it, and I had to find a way. And how could I get these shoes every week that are releasing with, little to no money in my bank account? And that kind of introduced me to the concept of reselling and flipping, because these sneakers would release. I had a unique way to get them, which basically nobody else had. So once I got the pair for $100, $200, I could flip them for double. So if I got 2 pairs, I'll sell 1, and I basically have a free pair of shoes. And I just continued to do that and scaled it up over high school and learned a lot from that.
So were you somehow able to figure out how to cut out the middleman, or how did you manage to be able to get the sneakers at a rate that allowed you to flip them and turn the profit like that?
Yeah. So when these like released, they'd always release online. And they would release at certain times on certain websites. So there were bots that we used to call them. So it was kind of like a techie thing where we had a program that would, auto the entire thing. So that like you could go on the website at the exact time it releases and press add to cart and put in all your information. But 10 seconds before that, my bot already checked out 10 pairs. And yeah, so yeah.
That's clever. That's brilliant. Are you still involved with any of that, or you've moved on to greener pastures now?
Oh yeah, grander pastures, but it's still a passion of mine, just buying and reselling shoes. I don't do it to the scale that I used to, just because I don't have the time. But every now and then there's like a big release, and now it's funny because again, I'm the second oldest in my family, so one of my younger brothers has kind of picked it up, and he's about the same age that I was when I started. So it's fun to watch him have a lot of success with it.
Yeah, and just for the audience sake, you're now, am I correct, you're a sophomore at Binghamton?
Yep, this is my 3rd semester in college.
And are you still 19, or have you turned 20 yet?
20. I turned 20 in December.
Okay, so for the audience's sake, keep this in mind. Before the age of 20, this gentleman has launched his own podcast, wrote a best-selling book, formed a company that you're now running, which is growing. We'll get into that in a bit. And he's still pursuing his degree full-time. So pretty remarkable. And so I want to talk about then, once you graduated high school, and what were next steps for you? How did you figure all that out, and what was the next big thing for you?
So yeah, in high school, I was, like I said, I had these different side ventures that really taught me a lot about, supply and demand, customer service, marketing on social media, e-commerce, simple stuff like that really were great skills to pick up at that time, because I still use them to this day. But in high school, it's like, again, I was in a small Catholic school, and there wasn't a bunch of people that thought like me. There was like nobody that thought like me, like as an entrepreneur. And and then the other side, my grandpa was an entrepreneur, and so was my dad, but they had no idea how the internet worked, because they never had a business that involved it. So I was kind of caught in between, where there was no one I could relate to, no one I could go to for help, and it kind of demotivated me and almost convinced me as to why not to continue to pursue what I was doing. So in high school, it was just kind of something I always tucked away, never shared anything I did with my friends, never talked about it. And it was almost like it didn't exist. But I knew if I wanted to take it to the next level, that couldn't be what was happening.
Hmm.
And I figured, I'm moving from a graduating class of 70 students to a university right down the road that has 18,000 undergraduates. Now there's an opportunity to find, a peer group of like-minded individuals, because that was the real key. And I'll admit, like, I do all this stuff that you mentioned, bestseller, podcaster, all this stuff, but I've always been an introvert. So there might have been a lot of potential on that campus to start finding those people that I was seeking, but there was no way that I was going to find them that first semester until I found a way to break in, and that was through the podcast.
Okay.
So the podcast I started the first semester, so October 2018. And that was really my excuse to like not have to talk to anyone face to face, but over the computer instead.
Okay.
And
So we're really only talking about, more or less a year and a half ago. You're a freshman. You're in your first semester. Is it fair to say you don't know anyone on campus? You've got all these ideas. You've got this entrepreneurial background, and you were feeling kind of isolated.
exactly. Yep. And that was the podcast was the escape, because I knew I could do exactly what I'm doing now, sit in my bedroom at the comfort of my home and call up people that inspired me and were doing things like being just have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for a few weeks. I interviewed my grandpa, I interviewed local people, and it blew up in the first month. And I have a co-host as well, just the one person that I found at college that thought like me, and we decided to start the podcast. But we hit the top 100 rankings in Apple Podcasts within like the first month somehow, and that just opened up like tons of opportunities in terms of like getting high level guests, advertisements, and kind of just motivated us to continue with it.
That's amazing. That's incredible. What do you attribute to that initial success right straight out of the gate from someone who had no background in that area?
I think when we got in originally, it was like a really good time. It doesn't seem so long ago, but podcasts were way less popular back then, surprisingly, especially the niche that we were covering, which was like young entrepreneurship, because there were podcasts with like, the Gary Vee, the Tony Robbins, the Ed Milet's, the Andy Frisellas, but there was never.
Hey, Andre, are you still there with me?
Hey.
Okay, I think we had you drop off there for just a moment, but glad you're back. So I was saying I had put up on the screen about Real Talk University, and you were saying that there really wasn't anything like it. I suppose that's why the name, hence the name, Real Talk University, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. And then right out of the gate, it just immediately caught on. Was it mostly folks from your campus, or were students from other colleges and universities around the country getting wind of it? And how did that happen?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of both. Again, like I've always considered myself an introvert. I've always hidden what I've worked on, and so there was no like local campaigns to promote what we were doing. But it caught on just through social media and different advertising like that. But more so widespread than just in my local area because some of the guests we were getting on. So I think the biggest attribute to why we were successful early on is we found a way to leverage these guests that we had on the show, their audiences, because we would have people come on, like Tim Sykes was a great example. He has like 2 million followers.
Mm-hmm.
And we got him to agree to an interview. And once we got in the interview, it was like the most fun he's ever had, it seemed like,
Really?
as well as us, obviously. And it was just, a natural, genuine conversation with two young guys that were ambitious and looked up to him. And he was so willing to help us after that he like posted different clips of the interview all over his social media, and it just blew up from that, and just a lot of those stacked up onto each other, and I think that's really how it got to where it was.
Mm-hmm. So by having prominent guests on, it exposes you to their whole audience, and then obviously you're able to build from there. That's brilliant. And that answers one of my questions when I was looking at your podcast. I was blown away that you were able to, in such a short period of time, be able to attract some pretty big names in internet marketing, like Neil Patel, for instance, and some others. That's really impressive.
Yeah, and I think people ask us this question all the time, and it's like, how do you get these big guests? How do you get all these people? And it's like, the behind the scenes work that goes into it would really shock a lot of people because we get no's 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're just out there with the frequency that most people don't have. And we're sending, tons of quality messages every day to people that, attract what we're doing. And then it's easy from there because when you get on a Neil Patel, now you change that message that you're sending to 50 people every day and say, here are some past guests that we've had on the show. Neil Patel carries weight when you're talking to other internet marketers. Now they're that much more willing to get on the show. So it's the snowball effect. Now we could go to anyone really and get them on the show. As to back then, we had to really fight for it. Mm-hmm. And then the last key that has, I think, been the biggest reason why we get these guests is because of the emails that we have since we're at college, the .edu emails. I think these guys are flooded with promotional emails, requests for all different kinds of things, and they see an EDU email. I think they're much more willing to give that a chance and a read before anything else because everyone, we kind of leverage that as well as like the pity or the, let's help out college students and give back to the young.
No, why not? Use that to your advantage while you still can, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's admirable. You need to leverage every resource and every advantage that you have available to you. So that's just smart. But I want to go back to what you said earlier. I'm sure that the .edu is certainly helpful and gets people to maybe give you a shot that might not otherwise. But I think what you talked about before that, the willingness to hear the word no, and to hear it over and over again. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of, a lot of people in sales and marketing positions struggle. And I think that if you talk to a sales coach or a sales manager, typically you'll hear that the biggest thing holding back sales reps from producing at their maximum level is just this hesitancy and fear of getting rejection. And it sounds like you and your partner there at the podcast just went for it and just weren't going to be bothered, and the word no wasn't you're just going to gobble that up and keep going and get fueled by it.
Yeah, I think it's that whole thing with like failure and no's and all that kind of stuff. And it's, I think, the most important aspect that people really get a grip on or understand before they take the dive into this. Because I'm motivated by failure now. And it's kind of funny you mentioned that. It's like we would message 100 people that we want on the podcast, and the first 15 answers would be a no. And me and my co-host would, every single no we got, we'd get more and more excited.
Awesome.
Because every single no we got, we knew was bringing us one no closer to that yes.
Right.
So why not be excited? It's like there might be 30 no's until you get your yes. So if you get the 16th no, we're celebrating because that's, we're 14 closer to the yes. So every time we got a no, we'd celebrate. And I think it was built upon because right after, so it's funny because right after high school, I took on another job, and it was at a local inside sales organization. So again, but going into college, there was a few things on my mind. One, I needed to find like-minded individuals. Two, I needed to continue to build my skill set if I wanted to succeed as an entrepreneur. And three, being, self-aware and as honest with myself as possible, I was an introvert and I hated, the customer-facing things. And I knew that I had to get better at it, and there's no better way to do that than cold calling 40 people every day.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
And it goes back to like the every no takes you one step closer to a yes. It's like anything with sales or marketing, it's all about volume. Nothing else matters. It's all about volume. I was making like 40 calls a day, and the average at my sales organization was like 15. And I'll tell you straight up, like I was not in the top 50% of sales reps skills wise, but I was the highest producing rep because I had the most volume. I had the most at bats. I had the most chances to get people on the phone and have a conversation. And that's all it was. And there was like nothing else behind it.
Well, you hit on it right there. And that's a story that you hear over and over again from top producers across all industries in sales. And you'll hear it from some of the biggest names, the biggest gurus, from Tony Robbins, all the way across all industries. When you're new and the skills aren't there, it's just a matter of putting in the reps, and you can actually outperform your colleagues that way just by being willing to do 2 or 3 times as many calls. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. It reminds me of a book called Go for No by Richard Fenton and Andrea Walsh. And it's really this whole premise of learning how to not only no longer fear rejection, but to start to do exactly what you, Andre, and your partner started doing, which was like high-fiving each other every time you heard the word no. The psychology behind that is profound. And it's something it's really difficult for a lot of people who've been in sales for a long period of time, for them to create that kind of mindset. So it's just remarkable that you guys were able to do that kind of organically on your own. That's really impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so then from there, once you figured it out and you said, okay, we've managed to do something here, having known nothing about it in creating a podcast, and then being able to turn it into a success relatively quickly. So then you put together a guidebook to help others do the same, correct?
Yep. So that was one of the big debates that me and my co-host had. Is we made the top charts, so we had a bunch of different opportunities for ads on our show. But when we kind of reflected on how to move forward, it didn't really translate as to why we started the show. We wanted to start the show, one, to help ourselves learn more about what was going on in the world of entrepreneurship, and two, to inspire other students around us to do more and to do other things along the entrepreneur lines, I guess you could say. So rather than plug in like a typical corporate company had in our podcast, we plugged our own resource that we made available that would teach other people how to start their own podcast, which has, led to a bunch of podcasts starting in my peer group and outside of that as well.
That's exciting. Yeah, it's a way to, to pay it forward and to help others to follow in your footsteps. So then when did the idea come to you that you should write a book, and how did that get started?
Yeah, that's always a good story. So in school, I've always been a pretty strong student. In high school, I've always had like really high grades, same in college. School always came naturally for me for whatever reason. I was never like a big fan of it, but it was never something that held me back, like a lot of entrepreneurs talk about how school failed them and all that kind of stuff. But the one class that always had a poor grade was writing. And I've always been like super, not confident in my writing and speaking abilities. And I think it stems from, my dad coming from Lebanon in the Middle East, and he's always had trouble with pronunciation and grammar and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's always been something that I'm self-conscious about. So writing a book and becoming an author was like the last thing I'd ever become, at that time. But so this was a year ago today, actually, not today exactly, but around this time, late January, just talking about the podcast, which was going on for 3-4 months at this time. Really just fell in love with the process and everything that was stemming from it, as to like the connections we were creating, the people we were hearing back from, as to how our episodes and our content has impacted them and motivated them. And I just found myself in a really good place. But I knew that, all right, I kind of took a step back, and that whole like New Year's resolution. If I wanted to, if I really care about this message that I so truly care about on the podcast, like how can I help other young entrepreneurs find success outside the classroom? Then I'd do whatever I could, or I'd be willing to do whatever it takes to spread that message to even one more person, if that's possible. And so I looked at it, from far away. And this was with the help of another podcaster. And I said, want to have a podcast. That means people can listen and they can watch, but there's nothing to read. And I know that some people like to read more than consuming audio and video content. I'm like, damn, that means I have to write a book. And just like with anything else, with the podcast and everything that I've ever done in my life, I started right away with absolutely no idea with how to get to where I wanted to go. I knew there was a destination, and I knew that there were some practical steps to get started. If you want to write a book, what do you got to do? You got to put the pen to paper and write. It's not rocket science. But and then from there, I figured everything else out. And now it's cool. A year later, at the same time, I'm writing my second book that is called Push to Start, and it's like the concept of just starting and taking immediate imperfect action, because that's just how I've, I guess, found most of my success at this age. And we're teaching a group of other people how to do the same thing. So it's just kind of crazy how everything moves so fast and works. But
that's fantastic. And it sounds like, from the way you described it, when the idea of writing a book first dawned on you, it really scared you, didn't it? So many really big ideas. People at around New Year's time, a lot of times we look at the past 12 months and then we start thinking, well, what should my goals be for the next 12 months? And the average person thinks, okay, usually what they'll set is maybe something that looks like a 10 or 20% increase over the previous 12 months. But you did something that a lot of high level business coaches teach nowadays, which is, if your main goal doesn't frighten you to near death, then it's probably not a very good goal. That the really big, the hairy, audacious goals are the ones that we need to be setting for ourselves if we really want to play the game big. And it sounds like that's exactly where you were when it first dawned on you. Wait a minute, me write a book? That doesn't sound right.
Exactly. And it's like, again, it's like through my whole journey, and it's cool because I've always hated writing, and I still do. Like, I write my new book still, like right now I'm in the process of writing it, and I don't enjoy it. I mean, there's stuff I'd rather be doing, but then at the same time, I've kind of fallen in love with the process because it's the best method for self-reflection. And I think self-reflection and self-awareness are so key to an entrepreneur's journey, and even just anyone in life. And it's just like helped me to like find this pattern that I'm now writing about, where like every single time something that's been like amazing, like any experience I could recall in life that like I felt like that high where you feel yourself living, like you're so alive. It stemmed from me taking action quickly, taking immediate imperfect action on something that I had no comfort in doing. And it was just simply seeking discomfort.
That is a gold nugget right there. If those watching or listening can take away just one thing, that's it right there. There's nothing more valuable than what you just shared with us. And for, I hate to keep pointing out that this young man is only 20 years old. He's got pearl wisdom there that it takes many people lifetimes to get to. So that's good stuff. And so the title of the book, I'm going to bring. Hey, Andre, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I think for some reason when I was pulling up an image of the book cover, and it seems like when I do that, we lose your audio, so I won't do that. The title of the book is What They Won't Teach You. Tell us, Andre, what is it they won't teach us, and why won't they?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is to seek discomfort. And my grandpa always told me to. And like you said, like I'm only 20 and I have all this wisdom, and it's not me. It's just I'm surrounded by the best possible people. So I'm just in a situation where, I've been surrounded by it my entire life. I guess just compared to other people in that situation, I did something about it,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't that hard. But so I take no credit, but he always told me that life should always be a growth centric experience, not a comfort centric experience. And I never understood that until now. But yeah, the book, very similar to the podcast, is, in 2019, 2020, just taking a look at the internet and what people are doing out there and the capabilities and the possibilities and the opportunities for anyone with a phone and a dream to do something with their life was just remarkable. And I had to write about it, and I had to give students around me advice and motivation to do something about it as well, because I was experiencing it, and I was like, there's no way that I can be the only one experiencing this, And that was the book, What They Won't Teach You. And it has nothing against colleges. I'm still in college. I don't think that the education system is where it should be, but I can't control that. What I can control is by giving the students that are in that system more the self-education aspect, learning outside of the classroom, because learning doesn't stop outside of the classroom. And if it does for you, then so will your growth in life. So it's not as much as what they won't teach you, but it's more so seeking more with your life and outside of the classroom, because they teach you what you got to learn to get a job and to do these baseline things in life. But if you're one of those people that you don't want to settle and you don't want to conform to societal standards and other people's standards and all that kind of stuff, and you just want a little bit more out of life, then that's what that book will help you to do. And it's really practical. I had a lot of success with this book somehow, and everyone that's read it was just like, yeah, like this. It's basically, when I read it, it's like you're speaking to me. So I wrote it super casually, just as I speak, like super casual and super practical. There's steps in there on how to succeed on social media, how to start a podcast, how to start a business, how to test your ideas, how to find your passion. There's practical information in there to basically uncover any question that you might have as an entrepreneur.
And there again, the big takeaway is move forward imperfectly and just get started, right?
Exactly. Yep. Stop waiting for life to happen.
Yeah. No, and it sounds so simple, but for the majority of the population, it's the biggest struggle, I think, that most of us are dealing with. So what a tremendously valuable message. And then you've also got your own company, a media company. What's that all about?
Yeah, so through doing everything that I've done that we've talked about, like the podcast and the book and the businesses in high school, I've picked up skills like building websites and managing social media and doing marketing and doing simple e-commerce and blog writing and copywriting, all these kinds of skills that we would normally have to pay for, but we couldn't afford at the time. So we just learned how to do them ourselves. And without even realizing it, we kind of just created a business because around our skill sets that we were learning. So there was no intention to ever do what we're doing now with our media agency, but it just kind of happened to the point where like we had all these skills and other people needed these skills for what they were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like if we don't do this, we're doing a disservice to people out there because we have things that they need and we need to offer them. And the people that offer them now in our local area and in most local areas, especially, the prices are too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
The work is a one-off product, and the relationships are never real. The timelines are always off, and it's just terrible. It's messy, it's unprofessional, and it's not going to lead to long-term sustainable success. So we wanted, getting into this, we wanted to do it completely different, and we didn't want to focus on products or services. We wanted to focus on building relationships, and whatever that took, we were going to make it happen. And there, we had a lot of clients coming in the beginning, and most of the things is like, hey, I paid thousands of dollars for this website. It took them 3 weeks, and when they delivered it in 3 weeks, it was nothing like I imagined. Couldn't get my money back. Couldn't get changes without paying more. What do I do? I'm stuck. Or I passed off my social media for someone to run it for $1,000 a month, and they told me they were professional. I had no idea what they were doing. I couldn't tell if it was working or not, but the results were never there. Or I tried to do this, I tried to do that, and it's almost like that same pattern of people just getting screwed over by price, timelines, and quality of work.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of focusing and selling people on what we do, we sell them on what they can do and how we can help them do that. And I think that's been our key to success. And then just recently, our biggest service or the biggest thing that we've been doing for people is building online course platforms, which has been like my favorite thing that I've ever done in business.
And why is that?
So just like the quick summary is like online. So I'm obviously big about self-education. I think the school system is broken in a lot of ways, and it doesn't mean don't go to college, but it does mean you should seek outside information for other things. And I think online courses are the best medium to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think online courses right now are ultimately failing, and they are. The stats prove it. The online courses right now have a less than 1% completion rate. And
wow, that's
so
amazing.
we looked at that, or I looked at that, and I was like, why is that? And if we don't fix this, then online courses will never have the chance to be successful, because if this trend continues, people will just stop believing in them and ultimately stop paying for them. And there goes the business model that I really think can change and revolutionize education forever. But I took a step back, and I'm in this unique situation where I'm still in school,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have taken online classes, and I kind of weigh the differences. Like, where are the holes? Why is online education failing? And it all comes down to accountability. So a typical online course, if people out there are listening, or Martin, even you have ever had experience with online courses, it's really just a video file.
Yep.
Or video files.
Mm-hmm.
So most online courses are just people recording themselves teaching what they know over a series of videos.
Right.
That's essentially the same thing as a textbook in school. So when I go and take a course at school, I don't just get a textbook and read it and there it is. That's essentially the comparison to online courses right now. Is if I were to go to college, which starts tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and grab my textbook, take it home, and at whatever point in time I decide to finish it, I finish it. And if I don't, I don't. There's no formula for success with that. And that's every online course today.
Mm-hmm.
There's no motivation. There's no accountability. There's no gamification. There's no so all these things we built in. And what we do now with our online courses that we build for people is we, one, have a start and stop date. So now you have to get in at a certain time. And once you're in, you're expected to complete the course at a certain time.
Okay.
So that adds like an accountability layer.
Right.
The second thing is when you start and stop at a certain time, you're also with a group of students that are starting and stopping at that time. In school, the biggest asset is the networking and the relationships and building friendships and talking to other people to get their perspectives on the work.
Mm-hmm.
With online courses right now, you don't have that because, you might buy the course now and someone might have completed the course 3 months ago. You don't know who's at what point.
Right.
Go at your own pace. I just don't believe in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other aspect of it is that the teacher, the teacher, there's the textbook, which is great, but there's no way you're going to get through that textbook with a full understanding of the concepts if there's not someone to guide you through it. So we put the teacher back into the online course because, yeah, sure, they're in the video lessons and it's all pre-recorded, but we put them back into the course. So it's not just an online course, but it's like a mentorship. So
how did you do that? How does that work?
Yeah, so so it's a little bit of tech and a little bit of just the concept and just a few people giving us a chance to do it. So like the first project was with David Meltzer. So this guy's like a entrepreneur. He's in the sports industry, and we interviewed him on the podcast, and really cool guy. And he just kind of asked us like, what's the biggest thing you're working on? And we told him online courses. And he's like, oh, I want to build an online course. And we told him, kind of the breakdown of our theory and what we thought was broken and why we thought it was broken and how we think we could fix it. And he was sold on the idea. But at that point, we had this whole concept and we had no idea how to actually make it work. There was like, it's an idea, and it's like an idea without anything to back it up. And so, again, I just took a weekend and really became obsessed with what we were trying to accomplish and put together the right tools and resources and software. So having a tech background helps with a lot of this stuff because it you need it in some areas, but I was just so determined to figure out a solution. And that was really started 9 months ago. And now we finally have like a product or a process, I guess you could say, to build online courses the way we want them and know they should be built for our clients or our partners rather. We don't have clients with partners.
Yeah, gotcha.
So yeah, 9 months later, we kind of have a process that we could apply really to anyone that wants to build an online course and do it in a way where we could help them help more people ultimately.
Nice. So how do you bring the instructor into that process then of the actual course in real time, or how does that structure?
Yeah.
work?
So like I said, the start and stop date is key because that means every week you're expected to go through X, Y, and Z content. And at the end of that week, instead of just, figuring out on your own and talking to other students, the instructor will come in and do a live call with all the students or one-on-one calls and kind of ask questions about what you just learned about. Ask them, what was things that you struggled with. Maybe the student wants them to go a little more in depth on a certain area, or maybe they question why they actually need to know that or how it applies to what they're doing. So it just brings the teacher back in a sense of they're open to questions, they're accessible, they're there to coach you through the content. And that's just in like the lecture side of things. And by doing all this, we've opened up the doors to doing it with like physical, like the workout space is big and the sports space is big because we just did a course for a golf instructor, online course for golf. Who could have imagined something like that happening and being successful? Like who can teach golf over the internet? Like I could watch Tiger Woods play all day and not get any better.
Right.
And we thought, yeah, the videos are great, but how can you learn just through videos? So we have a way to, if I'm a student taking the course, I could watch a 1 minute video on a certain fundamental or a routine or a swing or a warm up. And after I watch the professional or the teacher do it, then I could do it myself, recording myself, submit it to the teacher and get their feedback on if I did it right. And if I didn't do it right, what were things that I did wrong? Did I bend my knee too much? Was my elbow tucked in or anything along those lines? So you're getting real instant feedback from the professor, the expert themselves. So it's just opened up a ton of doors to so many possibilities. It's just...
That makes complete sense, the way you described it step by step there. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? It seems like it opens up, the mind to what couldn't be taught this way, right?
Yeah. I hope.
Fantastic. Wow, awesome. Well, so kind of want to, in closing here, sort of wrap up with telling us a little bit about what your day looks like, because obviously you're packing so much of productivity into your week. And I'm not sure if we froze up. It looks like we might have froze up here. So, Andre, can you still hear me? Andre, you got me?
Yeah, just
okay. I think we froze there for just a moment. So what's a typical day look like for you? Do you have a lot of the people that I speak to on a regular basis, A lot of times we'll compare routines, especially morning routines. What are those daily rituals that people do when they start their day to set them up for success? And I'm curious if you have any of that going on currently. And what can you share with us in terms of being able to maintain the level of energy that obviously you bring, and the ability to focus on one thing and be able to kind of knock out the things that you need to and check the boxes and so forth. What can you share about that?
Yeah, so I guess I get up decently early. Honestly, not that early, but around like 7 o'clock
That's
Eastern.
early for a college student, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. For most of my peers, it's early, but for like the average person, it's like whatever.
Yep.
So nothing to brag about there. And that's just natural. Like I don't put an alarm or anything. It's just when I get up, and it's like cool. If I don't get up that time, then it's whatever. And I've always had like the theory of like keep it stupid simple, where like yeah, I could have all these different routines of like when I wake up, I got to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
For me, like it doesn't work for me. I like can't like stay in a routine for so long. I always have to do things differently. Like I hate staying the same, and that's just me personally. That doesn't work for everyone, but like I love like new situations, new experiences, and just doing things different ways. Obviously, there's routines that you have to stick to, like taking a shower, drinking water when you first get up. And then I guess the biggest thing too in the morning is I always try to get done one important thing, whether it be a podcast interview, write a few pages for my book, take an interview, do a call, write a post on social media. I always try to have one accomplishment to give me momentum going into the rest of the day. And yeah, like my days are always a mess, but the biggest thing is like I plan it the night before, I guess I'd say. It's like the night before I'll kind of look at 1, my calendar, 2, my email, 3, my social media, and 4, just my personal, what do I want to do that next day, and kind of set expectations for I have to call this person. I have to complete this homework assignment. I have to complete this website for a client. I have to do these revisions on a course platform for this guy. And then being a student of my calendar has been like the biggest thing ever for me, because if it's not on my calendar, then it's not getting done. And I just put so many systems into place and have spent so much time making sure that my calendar works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that be, having people go through a Calendly link or having all these different email integrations for different calendars. So everything that I need to do is on my calendar. And if it's not on my calendar, then it's, doesn't matter. So I could do it after hours. And after hours for me is 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
But it's usually never really 5 o'clock. It's more like 7. So after 7, it's my own time, and I could either watch movies, Netflix, read, hang out with friends, eat dinner, and whatever else. So I give myself enough time to still, do the things that most other people do. But again, it's not like I'm enduring anything that I do throughout the day. It's just like my oxygen. It's what I love to do. So
that's fascinating, and it's great to hear, because especially right now, it seems like so much of what you see out there in the personal development world it's all about the grind. And it seems like the harder, the better, the more admirable you are if you're able to endure this, seemingly endless grind for the big, hairy, audacious goal at the end of it. And it sounds to me like you're, again, a much more wise person to follow your passions and allow the things that you need to get done with your day be the fuel instead of the thing that drains you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest things too, is like I can't stand people who constantly endure life or think that they need to endure life, because if you're enduring life, then you're doing something wrong, because you're supposed to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a way and an opportunity for you to enjoy life. You just have to find whatever it is that's gonna, do the other thing, because everyone wants so many different things in life, and there's certain ways to get them. But I just hate the fact that people endure life, because I don't know how you do that.
Yep. No, and it's great that that's a message that you're bringing to your audience, and you're sharing with it sounds like an ever widening group of people that you're influencing. And with that note, I just want to thank you again, sincerely. It's really been an honor to chat with you today, learn more about what you're doing and how your mind works. And I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy day. I know you got a lot going on. Your semester starts back up again tomorrow. So it's not as if you've got all kinds of open time, but it's been so good to have you join us today. And before we close out here, how can people find you? First, let me just run it down. The book is called What They Won't Teach You. The podcast is called Real Talk University. And where can people find you, Andre, if they wanted to connect?
Well, I just want to say thank you to you as well, Martin, because just anyone who extends an invite like this on a show or an interview, it just means a lot to me. It gives me an opportunity to, share my message with maybe one more person that hasn't heard it before, and to give me the opportunity to do that, it just means the world to me. And you ask amazing questions and made me think in ways that I've never thought before. So again, thank you for that, because by doing that, I continue to learn more about myself and more about my own ambitions and how everything plays a role into the bigger picture. So thank you for that.
It's been my absolute pleasure. 100% heartfelt pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
And yeah, if for people to find me, it's just Andre Haykal Jr. AndreHaykal Jr. You can plug that into Google, surprisingly, and everything about me will show up, or on any social media. So
Fantastic.
Pretty unique name, I guess, which is an advantage.
Yeah, I'm sure that's all good marketing for you. All right, Andre, thank you again so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you next time. My name's Martin Meisenheimer.